I think a lot of the time people come into readings with burdens on their shoulders of certain conversations they never got to have, or things that have been haunting them all these years. If only I had have said this, or if only we had have done that. And you usually find throughout readings that the healing that takes place in that moment is the answers to the questions that I feel like have been outstanding for so long. That's the healing in those moments, getting the answers that you need and that you've been seeking and you just haven't been able to find.
Welcome to Don't Step on the Bluebells, the podcast where personal healing and transformation take center stage. I'm your host, Amanda Parker, and I'm a fellow seeker on the journey of personal growth. Join me as I delve into the stories of gifted healers, guides, and everyday people who have experienced remarkable transformations. Listen in as they share their practical wisdom to enrich your everyday life. And don't forget to hit subscribe and never miss a new episode. Welcome to today's episode of Don't Step on the Bluebells, where we're diving into the fascinating world of mediumship and its power to heal. Our guest is the remarkable Jessica Lynne, a gifted psychic medium who has captivated seekers looking for connections beyond the material world. Jess has dedicated her life to bridging the gap between the living and the spirit world, offering comfort and guidance to those looking to reconnect with departed loved ones. Jess's insights have reached a diverse audience, from celebrities and athletes to business owners, and she's been featured on prominent platforms like The Morning Show on Channel 7, 7 News, The Australian, and Marie Claire, to name a few. This episode, we are going to be exploring Jess's journey from the corporate world to full-time mediumship, the power of surrender and trust, the healing power of connecting with the spirit realm, and advice for aspiring mediums and those seeking healing. So wherever you are on your own journey, this conversation promises to open your mind to new possibilities beyond the veil as we explore the transformative power of mediumship with Jessica Lynne. Let's dive in. Jessica Lynne, thank you so much for being here with us on Don't Step on the Bluebells.
Thank you. I am really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I don't remember exactly how I came to find you, but I know that I'm watching your videos like every day now.
That's so lovely. Thank you.
So I'm super curious to hear, just to get us started in the conversation, what is it that you're really excited about right now?
I'm just excited about what's to come. I feel like I'm trying not to control the narrative so much anymore. I'm just sort of planting seeds and just seeing what comes to fruition and see what lands and what doesn't. I've never been in such a place of trust with the universe, with my guides, with the future for me. So I don't know, there's nothing specific I can put my fingers on. I'm sort of just excited to see what's to come, and I'm just surrendering, I guess we could say, to whatever will be. So I'm just excited about life. I've never been in a better place in so many areas of my life, and it's because I've taken this chance on myself and I've just sort of thrown caution to the wind, and I'm in my business full time now, and this hasn't always been the case. I've only been full-time for a year now, so it's just clocked over the year, and I'm going, oh my gosh, time has just been flying. And yeah, it's just really exciting to see all of the things that I've been trying to manifest along the way finally come to fruition.
That's amazing. I think it's one of the hardest things to just be in the moment, to let things happen. I know this is something that I really struggle with a lot on my own. I know the principle of surrender and let go and just allow what's unfolding to unfold and basically get out of the way.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you've figured it out.
Yeah,
or you're
hard.
Figuring it out.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard when you've been programmed to hustle and to get in there and get things done and push and push and push. And that's what we're taught. It's like, if you're not in it, you're not going to win it kind of thing. And I think that sometimes, yes, we have to put one foot in front of the other, and there's aligned actions that we need to do in order to help manifest our dreams. But a lot of the time, just planting those seeds and trusting that some way you will find yourself getting to where you need to be, that's the surrendering part. It's trying not to control all the in-betweens. It's sort of just planting the seeds and then moving towards it and just watching things unfold, because I usually find that the magic comes in in the parts that you're not trying to strangle. If you're not trying to control it, all these beautiful things start to happen that you never even thought possible. Like, I couldn't have predicted every single step of my journey. And you know what? I don't want to. How boring. If we were just controlling everything one step at a time, we would just be not enjoying life at all. So it's a balance. That's what I'll call it.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful reminder as well, that it's actually the things that we're not controlling that create the magic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true, because whenever I have like a plan and I'm trying to follow it to a T, or like really design the details of what I want to happen, first of all, it never works that way anyway.
No, it doesn't.
No, and then you're a bit closed off because you're following that plan. You're not even seeing these bits and pieces of magic or insight or wisdom that are coming in and guiding you along the way as well.
Exactly. Yes, it's definitely, I'm really learning that, because I was an EA for years, an executive assistant, and I always had to control every single piece. And I was so used to that, and stepping into something that is so different, like mediumship, you just can't do that. Like, you can't control, you don't know what's coming in any given moment when you're reading for someone. You just sort of got to allow things to be in the moment. And it's really hard to shift that mindset. So I commend anyone who's trying to surrender. It's not an easy journey.
So you say that you were working as an executive assistant. Now, when you say that you're full-time in your business, this is full-time mediumship?
Yes. Yeah. I'm working as a psychic medium now. So I was doing that as my side thing for a long time. I was like, oh, no, I'm never going to do this full time. This is not going to be it. I'm always going to just do it as the thing that I love on the side, as a hobby. And I was refusing. I'm like, nope, it's never going to be. I'm always going to be like this. And then everything kind of moved and shaked along in life. And all of a sudden I was put into this scenario where I didn't like the job that I'd just thrown myself into. And I was like, oh my God, I'm 5 days into this new job and I don't like it at all. I was like, it was painted to me like it was going to be perfect. The universe knew how to get me. They're like, oh, if we like plant all these seeds, Jess will be like, woohoo, this is the best job offer ever. So I jumped into it and I was like, oh my God, what have I done? And then I was like, you know what? There is no time like the present to just take a chance on me. I think at that point, I was working part-time in my mediumship. I was booked out for a year solid on my part-time hours. I just closed my books and I had a wait list of 800 people. And I was like,
oh my God.
Maybe now is an okay time for me to be jumping in. It was like I needed all of that for me to be convinced. It was just ridiculous. But hey, you know, when you've done something so long, like I was an EA for like 14, 15 years, I always thought that was what I was supposed to be doing. And you're programmed to do the safe things, the traditional stuff, you know, the guaranteed work. But I've just found like having the courage to be able to step out of that norm and just trust and believe in myself. It's just all this abundance just keeps flowing as I keep putting in the work and trying to better myself. So yeah, really interesting the way that spirit work in that way. They know how to play me.
I love that you had this 800 person waiting list before you realized, I wonder if there's something more here.
I wasn't even convinced at that time. I was like, oh, what if I don't get the people? And my wife's like, are you crazy? She's like, seriously, like the writing's on the wall, but it took me that to do it. So, you know.
Yeah, well, it takes a tremendous amount of courage, even if you know, and all this, it's like so crystal clear, like the courage it takes to just really own that and step forward on that path, even though now you know, okay, all these beautiful things flow in after, but it's still like that moment of really committing and deciding to follow that path forward. That's, I really think like the moment that you really step into that change. That you're really choosing that evolution of who you are.
Yes, that's when everything shifts. It's like it was only going to take me so far. And I found as soon as I jumped into it full time, all these doors started opening. It was like they were almost waiting. They're like, we can only show you so much. And once you fully commit and you trust us and you trust the process and trust yourself, really, that's when all these opportunities start presenting themselves. So if you're feeling kind of how I was, where you're like, oh, I really feel pulled to do something else. Like I know there's something else out there for me. I'm just so scared because I don't know where that's going to land. I don't know if it's going to work out for me. Maybe just open the door a little bit and just see what it's all about, because you'll probably find that that's where all of your abundance is and you're being pulled in a different direction for a reason. So you kind of have to trust that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who are listening, like just various clients of mine, coaching clients, or people that give feedback when they listen to episodes, so we have two different kinds of listeners. One are like the healers and like the guides who are really like coming out of the closet in a way, like really stepping out onto the stage, like, okay, I'm doing this work now, and there's a lot of like fear and desire for belonging and not wanting to be rejected. And then all these fear stories that so many of us have just from living our lives. And then you have a lot of people who are just reconnecting to the knowledge that they have these gifts. And it's something they might have suppressed from some whatever incident they had when they were younger, or something a family member said, or they were scared of all these things that were coming in at some point in their lives. And they're just starting to reconnect into that place of like, oh my God, there's something more here. I'm going to have to explore this. So how was that for you? I mean, you were doing the mediumship part-time, you stepped into it full-time, but was there a moment where you like were disconnected and reconnected, or what's that story for you?
Yeah, so I was always very intuitive. I've had a really great intuition, gut instinct. I've always been interested in this. So I've loved psychic mediums for as long as I can remember. I would see as many as I could find. I would go to meditation classes. I was always connected in some way. It was just I never really knew that I could do this myself. And it wasn't until I was like in my 30s that it all started for me. So sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, like you've wasted so much time not doing this. And I'm like, not really. I'm like, because I would not, no way in hell I would be the medium I am today if I had have done this like 10 years ago. Like I would not have even known who I was to be able to give people the guidance and the advice and be able to recognize in them what I need to see in order to help them move forward in their lives when I'm connecting. So I think everything happens perfect divine timing. I truly believe that. It's not that I necessarily ever felt disconnected. It was just I hadn't ever felt as connected as what I had when I finally decided to step into this in a way that I was open to seeing whatever would come to fruition. So I actually had my first moment channeling someone was in a group setting. So I had gone to a random Sunday class where we were just sort of exploring beginning mediumship. And I brought my friend along. I'm like, stuff it. We're just going to see what the hell this is all about. We sat there, and in the first like 5 or 10 minutes, the instructor was like, okay, we're going to teach you how to blend with spirit. So we're all sitting there with our eyes closed, like picturing all this white light around us. And she's like, all right, then open your eyes, pair up with someone you don't know and start channeling. And we were like, what? So I'm sitting there opposite this lady, and she's like, all right, then close your eyes and just try and connect to someone. See what you can feel. And I started feeling this male energy around me, but I actually got reference to a man that I know and who had passed. And I was like, why am I seeing this man when I'm trying to be channeling for this lady? But I realized soon after, when I just started to trust that and explained the type of person that he was and the way that he passed, it all made sense to her. And she's like, oh my God, that explains my dad. Like my dad passed that way. And I thought, ooh, I'm like, this is clever. Clearly spirit are using my memories of somebody else to help me connect with whoever I'm trying to channel at this moment for this lady. So it was instantly like, as soon as I opened myself up to spirit, it was like everything came flooding in. Like I had remembered, I'd had amnesia for years, and all of a sudden I just remembered everything that I was supposed to remember about how to do this. So that moment for me was like unlocking something in my brain, and it had felt like I'd been asleep like for so long. And finally they've woken me up. And honestly, I haven't looked back. I've been like, oh, now give me more. What's next? What's next? What's next? And it's not that I don't doubt myself sometimes, because it's so natural to. And that's part of this. It's like, oh, crap, that was a really crap reading. I could have done so much better than that. What if I dug deeper? Or what if I compare myself to that person and they always get this? And why don't I get things like that? And I still do that to myself all of the time. So you can have someone standing up there and you go, oh, they're such a well-known healer or a medium or whatever. They have the same thoughts that you have every single day. We are no different. No one is different. We are all the same. We have doubts. We have fears. We don't trust ourselves. We don't trust spirit. Like, it's just the way that it is, and it never changes. Every reading I do, I'm nervous. Every single one. Because I'm like, oh, shit, please say yes. Please say that you can validate that. I'm like, I'm just as nervous as I was on day one, and that's just human.
It's such a good reminder. I don't know if you're just channeling my energy as well. Like on this podcast, especially because the people that I'm inviting and having conversations with, I admire so deeply. Like, I'm really thoughtful before I send an invitation, and it's really like teachers or people who I look at with such reverence for what they're doing and how they're showing up in the world. And then I'm like, oh my God, okay, ground yourself, like be present, just be yourself. You're doing the podcast. You're doing great. It's really a good reminder.
Yes, it's really human to not always trust yourself or to be scared or nervous or whatever. So if you're starting your healing journey, hell, if you feel like you're confident in your healing journey, there will be days where you're like, oh my God, I'm so nervous, or I can't believe I'm talking to this person right now. And you'll get all the butterflies and all the things. And I still get all that. So you're not alone.
Okay. Just celebrate it now,
Yeah, just embrace it.
I was watching, it must have been a YouTube video from a man who teaches public speaking. And this woman was saying, whenever I go on stage, my voice is always shaking. And he was like, well, why is your voice shaking? And he was like, because your body's shaking. And why is your body shaking? Because you're nervous. And his advice was actually just like, get up and burn off the energy before you go on stage. Like, do some push-ups, run around the room. So I'm like, that is brilliant advice.
It's so
just
good.
Get it all out, and then you can sit down and just be present where you are.
Yes. And I think too, like focusing on just speaking about whatever you're meant to be speaking about. And I think sometimes people, when they go on podcasts or they get interviewed or whatever, they've got this like, oh my God, like what if I get it wrong? Or what if I like say something wrong? Or what if I like stop speaking and can't get the words out or whatever? But you got to think, whatever you're talking about, you know what you're talking about. You cannot get that wrong. Like when I'm talking about mediumship, if I'm on a podcast or whatever, I'm like, Jess, you kind of can't mess this up because you know this. Like you got to trust that whatever's going to come out is going to come out in perfect timing and the right way or the way that it's supposed to. So
you've mentioned the word a couple times, and like this is what we're really touching on in the podcast is all about healing and transformation. So I'd love to hear, what does healing mean for you?
I feel like healing is something that is a journey. I don't think it's something that necessarily is, it's weird. It's not like it's a destination. So like, oh, we're heading to healing. It's like you're not going to ever reach anything. I just feel like that it's acknowledging within yourself the parts of you that you still feel are a work in progress. It's like, you know what, I still feel like I need to work on that, or I need to heal that in some way because it's holding me back. It's not allowing me to either be the person that I want to be, or it's making me anxious or nervous, and it's stopping me from being the person that I aspire to be. So I feel like healing along the way, it's all about acknowledging the parts of you that you still want to work on or that you want to change, and putting into place aligned actions to do just that.
So it's not actually that place that we're trying to get to, this place of being healed.
No, I don't think that we ever get healed. And maybe when we're on the other side, but I think that there's always going to be things that we're working on or that we're wanting to do better. We're always evolving and growing and learning. And I just think that if we continually push ourselves to, I want to be healed, it's like, what is that? Like, what is healed? Like, how do you know when you're there? you kind of don't. Like, no one's going to walk around going, I am healed. It's like, what? Like, yes, we want to find closure and alignment, and we want to feel more at peace. Maybe that's the better word for it. Like, we want to find more peace within ourselves. We're healing ourselves over time with the wounds that have been opened throughout life, and we're trying to find a better version of peace for us along the way.
I can imagine also just specifically with the kind of work that you're doing, so the channeling and the mediumship and everything that comes with that, what would you say healing means in that context?
A lot of the time when it comes to mediumship, and especially when you're connecting with the other side, a lot of the time people are wanting healing in the form of closure. It's having some form of acknowledgement that you and your loved ones are okay, that there's nothing left unsaid, that whatever unfolded that day with that person when they passed or during those moments, that we're not holding on to any of that. Like, the spirit world aren't holding anything against you, or there's nothing there that I feel like we still need to work on or mend in some way. I think a lot of the time people come into readings with burdens on their shoulders of certain conversations they never got to have, or things that have been haunting them all these years. If only I had have said this, or if only we had have done that. And you usually find throughout readings that the healing that takes place in that moment is the answers to the questions that I feel like have been outstanding for so long. That's the healing in those moments, getting the answers that you need and that you've been seeking and you just haven't been able to find over that period of time.
The first mediumship reading, I'm trying to remember or think if this is true, but I think so. It was the first reading that I had with a woman I ended up studying with. So I'll say I've been a student of mediumship, but it hasn't clicked in yet. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
So the psychic channeling feels pretty good, but I know there's just more on the journey to uncover there. But I had that first reading, and I just remember there are a few moments because she was practicing what's called evidential mediumship. I don't know if you are using these kind of frameworks in what you're doing, but so she was showing me a lot of like evidence, proof to help me connect to who that person was. And so actually she was channeling someone who I didn't even really know who it was, but there was so much connection like in the name that I knew exactly who it was, even though I had never actually met this person. And I remember in that moment really feeling like, oh my God, like it really just so much family history felt like it made sense in that moment. And that alone felt healing. You know, it wasn't even solving anything. It was just like the knowing that that was possible and that you could connect into this ancestry and yeah, like that people were like that your ancestors, that people are sort of like there. And I mean, maybe that's scary too, you know, depending on the ancestors, but just feeling like you're really supported by so many layers of people who have come before you.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I think too, in readings, it can often be that the people that step forward are the ones that potentially we didn't really know very much of here in the physical world. Perhaps you didn't get to meet them or you didn't get to spend a lot of time with these people, but I feel like that their souls are still connected to you in some way, and they're very invested in your life, and they might not have the memories or the physical memories with you here that you can carry with you, but their connection to you is very real. And I think sometimes when people are getting readings, they're very quick to dismiss the people that they don't know here. They're like, oh, I didn't really know them. Move on kind of thing. And I always like to go, no, not so much. We're not moving on just yet because there's some reason why they've pushed forward. They've got something to say. So I always try to find the message before we move on. And a lot of the time, the message hits and it's exactly what's going on and it's exactly what they need to hear, or it's something that somebody in their family needs to hear at that particular moment in time. So I always like to say to my clients, be open to what comes through. Yes, 95% of the time we can get the person that you're hoping to connect with, but in all reality, it's not dial a spirit. It's not, hey, let's talk to Michael Jackson. Like, that's not what it is. So we need to sort of be open to who comes through and why. And I think that that's when you get the most, I guess, as we say, healing or profound moments or light bulb moments. It can often be from the ones that weren't even that closest to us here. It's because they've watched us our whole lives. So they know things and they've seen us change and transform, and they're inspired and in awe of us. And sometimes they've got the gold nuggets. So I would be listening.
So do you find, like, in what you're doing, are you, in a way providing the service for the person who's like, hello, I'd like to have a reading, or is it for the people on the other side?
Oh, it's a bit of a mix. I really do feel like it's a moment for both sides. It's like sometimes spirit have been waiting to say these things for so long, and you really do feel like the messenger. It's like they're having conversations through you, and spirit might have things they feel are left unsaid, and they've wanted to apologize for something, or they've wanted to have someone understand something that went on. And it's my job, I guess, to articulate that in a way that my client would be open to hearing, but also then providing them with, it's really funny. Actually, this is just an aside. I was reading for someone the other day, and they were saying to me, oh my God, can you tell my mum, blah, blah, blah. Can you tell her this and tell her that? And I said, she can hear you. I'm like, she's hearing everything you're saying to me right now. It's like, I don't have to tell her anything. You just say whatever you want to say right now, and I will tell you what I'm thinking or feeling or whatever comes into my mind as a response, so we can have like a bit of a conversation here. It literally is like you're the middleman, like interpreting this information. And afterwards, a lot of my clients say, I literally feel like I was just sitting there talking to my mom or my dad, and I really needed that. And I'm like, well, you know what? They needed that too. It wasn't just for you, it was for them too, because the connection feels the same. It's just I can see you and I can only feel them. But it's the same energy. It's for both. It's healing for everybody, we'll call it.
Yeah, because I can imagine sometimes, I can sense, like, I've just had a series of coincidences over the last couple of weeks. Like, people have been coming in. I mean, I was sitting in a workshop this weekend. So I'm studying with the Shamanic Foundation here in London, and I was in a workshop on community. And this woman approached me and she said, Amanda, are we having a phone call next week? And I just look at her. I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, what is your name? Like, I didn't know who she was. And then I realized a friend of mine who lives in the Netherlands had insisted that I speak to this woman she's friends with here in London. And she was like, I'm having goosebumps everywhere. She was like, I really think you need to connect to this woman, like reach out to her. And she had already introduced us like half a year ago, and we just didn't really connect. So we talked last week to set up a call for next week. And we were sitting in this 15-person workshop together this weekend, like in North London, like super far from whatever, center of gravity. And in those moments, I'm just like, okay, there's something being weaved on a level that I'm not seeing, that I don't fully understand. And that's, I guess for me, that's also, yeah, I mean, that's maybe just spirit, but that's also this element of like, is it her ancestors and mine? Or like all these people like, come on, let's get them in the same room at the same time. There's so much that we just can't see if we're only looking at the physical world around us.
Definitely. That is not a coincidence. I honestly believe that that's like you guys being pulled together for some reason because you need to connect. I love things like that. I never think anything's a coincidence. It's like you said, it gives you the goosebumps. It's like, oh my gosh, so strange, but so cool at the same time.
It's actually just blew my mind all weekend. I was like, okay, what's the reason? What are we building here? Like just waiting. Yeah. And then it has to be surrender. Just surrender. It'll all become clear.
It will for sure.
I'd love to hear a bit, I guess, just how you work with people. Like, how does that happen? Do people, are they just reaching out for a reading? Is that it? What's your process? How do you love supporting others?
Yeah, so this is something I've been working on lately. So when I first started, I was very much, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do events, I'm going to do groups, I'm going to do one-on-ones, I'm going to do everything. I was like, come one, come all kind of thing. And now that I'm a year in, I'm like, whoa, I'm like, okay, I am reining this in because I work so much better in a one-on-one capacity. And I've learnt that over time. I'm like, you know what? I love to be in a group to be able to share an experience. And some of those experiences are beautiful. And I love connecting with people. But I feel like when I'm working with someone one-on-one and people can feel that they can be vulnerable and we can get underneath the hood of the car, that's where I feel like the magic happens for me. So I'm working a lot more one-on-one these days. I've actually just stopped doing my groups. I've stopped doing events for now. I'm just reining it in and doing my one-on-ones. And I also do 1-question readings as well, where I channel the question for someone in like a 5-minute video, and then I send that to them. And it's kind of like little fire readings. So I can connect with more people because I'm so booked out, which I'm so blessed that I am, that I always want to connect with as many people as possible. So I'm doing that too. But yeah, I really find that over time, you do figure out what works best for you. And I was on a podcast the other day with Mickey Fisher, and she was saying to me, I only want to do groups. I just want to be doing Reiki and group readings, and I want to be in like everyone's energy. And I was like, girl, we are complete opposites. And she's like, nah, give me groups any day of the week. And I was like, cool, well, I'll send everyone who wants to do a group to you, and you send all the one-on-ones to me, and we'll share. And she's like, yep, all good, girl. So I think over time you just figure it out. And for me, that's what I love to do. I love to connect with people and be in that like intimate setting. And yeah, so people reach out, they book in, and we just see what happens and we go from there. But yeah, that's how I'm working these days. And I only just figured that out like a few weeks ago. So this is fresh. Fresh revelation.
Hot off the press.
For sure.
Yeah, I definitely noticed for me, that shift in energy. Sometimes the one-on-one work is really energizing. Sometimes it's the group, and like it really changes and drastically. I'm like if I'm doing mostly one-on-ones at some point, I'm like, I hate one-on-one. I only want groups. And then I have to like switch it around, like, okay, don't burn it all down,
Yes.
like keep it lit a little bit and just give yourself more exposure to different energy. That's fine.
Exactly. And you know what? I'm open to that. I might change at some point in time, but for now I'm going to honor how I'm feeling, and I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other and just see what happens. Go from there.
So you also mentioned, because I'm really fascinated about this, like the development process and how you actually grow that skill set. And what I heard from you is, yeah, really in your 30s, you were just super, super curious and started like going to events or situations that you'd be able to start channeling. How did you continue to grow that? Was it just by doing readings, or did you keep taking courses or find mentorship?
I did start off doing meditation classes, but when I went to that, I guess that short little fire course on that weekend, that was where it all sort of kicked off for me. And the reason why I went to that was because the medium who was running that class was a lady that I'd done a reading with, and I loved her style. I was like, I love you. You are direct. You are blunt. You're like straight to the point. You do not bullshit. And I'm like, that is the type of chick that I want to learn from. So after I went to her class, I was like, all right, what else is she doing? And she was doing like, I think it was like a 6 to 8 week like beginners course in mediumship. But I think it started like it was psychic and medium. It was like a bit of both. And I thought, well, let's just like go with it, see what happens. By the way, for ages, I was like, I'm not a psychic. I'm only a medium. And I was like, so like, no, don't even call me a psychic. It's not happening. And then over time, I developed my psychic ability, and now I'm a psychic medium. But I have always been really stubborn with this. So I'm like, nope, I'm not doing full time. I am not a psychic and all that. And the spirit world are like, cool story, girl, like just wait. So anyway, I learned with this lady for that course, and then I did her intermediate course, and then she mentored me for 2 years. So I did intensive mentorship. I read for free for 2 years. Anyone that would let me, I did free readings. I was not in a place where I was like, I want to charge people. I just wanted the experience. I wanted to build my symbology, my confidence, build the connections. Every single step of the way, I have not made any decisions until I felt like I was ready. And also when people were telling me that I was ready. It's really weird. So people will be like, oh my God, Jess, why aren't you charging? I'm like, oh, I don't know, maybe. And they're like, no, you should. I'm like, oh, okay. So I was like, okay, $30. And then people are like, oh my God, Jess, what the hell's wrong with you? You need to charge more. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. So even to this day, I wait until I get it hit on the head before I do things. And it's just the way I do it. I'm like, I'm just going to wait until I feel the pull, and then I'm going to go in that direction. Even like I said, with the groups, like I've waited until I've been hit on the head with it, and then I make the call. So that's just a little advice to you guys. Maybe don't wait as long as I wait, but I feel like sometimes you just need to, you can hear it so many times from other people, but until you believe it and you feel it within your soul, don't force yourself to do anything until you are 100% ready and convinced that it's the right timing for you. No matter what anyone says, no matter if you're like, you know what, they're probably right, but I still feel weird. Just wait. Just wait a little bit longer until you are 100% convinced, and then do it, because then you won't look back.
And then you're actually aligned, it sounds like.
Yeah. I get aligned when I get hit in the head.
Yeah, by the time you're stepping on the path, like the red carpet's already like
it is
rolled out there.
Yeah, they've all been waiting for a long time, and I'm like, okay, I'm finally here. I'm like late to the party, but it's all right. Get there in the end.
Well, it's also just really powerful because my experience of you, and we're also just speaking, but like my experience of you is that you're super experienced, that you know exactly what you're doing, and that you have this like really remarkable skill set and tool. And so I think it's also just helpful to know you've also been developing that muscle. It's not that you were just like, I am now a medium and everything is just perfect. It's like really you also put in the discipline to learn and develop and grow.
Oh yeah, I think it's so important. And to continue to push yourself too. Like even to this day, I'm looking at parts of what I do and I'm like, ooh, I want to get better at that. Or I'm going to push myself in this reading today to see if I can get this. Or like I still challenge myself every single day, because I think that it's really important for us to grow and to learn and feel like we're always wanting more. Like I have a thirst for it. I'm like, ooh, what's next? And what am I going to do now? And I always feel like I'm never going to be the girl that's standing up there going, I am great and I am healed and I am done. And like, no way. You're always going to see me being like, oh shit, I don't know what I'm doing. And fingers crossed. And like, I'm like you guys.
So have you had any remarkable, like, I mean, I say remarkable because that's what I'm excited about, right? But like any stories that stand out from readings that you've done or specific moments that you could share so that people get a taste for what's actually possible?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Some of my absolute favorite readings have been with people who are still living. So connecting with people who are nonverbal, who have dementia, who are in those certain states. And I think they're some of the most powerful readings because it allows us to understand that people who are living in that state are not suffering. They're not sitting there suffering in their minds. And I think that that's something that is misunderstood with us. We just see that and we're like, oh my God, they're not themselves. They don't know who they are. They don't know who we are. Like the poor things, it's so horrible to watch. And it is. Like, don't get me wrong. It is awful to watch somebody have that happen and feel like they're losing themselves over time. But the thing that we don't see is that their mind is wandering. It's going back and forth to the spirit world. It's seeing their loved ones on the other side. They're making plans. They're figuring out how things are going to be. They're watching over you and your lives, almost like they're a spirit without being a spirit yet. It's like this transitional phase, I guess we could say, and they're getting the comfort that they need. And, obviously they're still meant to be here physically for a reason. For us, potentially, for us to be able to get closure or say goodbye, or perhaps they need to be here for something physically for whatever reason. And I think being able to give us that understanding that they're okay is really powerful, especially when we're in those, like they're some of the hardest moments of our lives, watching our loved ones be sick, and something like that is awful to see. But knowing that they're okay, I think is really amazing. And it's just helping us to find that acceptance, I guess. And it's given my clients so much hope. They're like, oh, thank God. Well, when they're in the home and they're there at night, I don't feel so bad now that they're just sitting there on their own and they're alone. And I'm like, no. As soon as you leave, their soul's like, bye. They're like, I'm going to go over and see my wife that's on the other side and we're going to have a chat. And even today I channeled somebody's father who's still here in the physical world and he's in a home with dementia. And I said, the first thing he came through and said is, I'm just fine. He's like, I'm just enjoying the music. And then she goes, oh my God, they play him music every single day. And I was like, well, how beautiful that he can tell you he knows that. Even though he doesn't look like he's with it, he knows what's going on and he's enjoying the time that he has. So they've been the most powerful readings for me so far. And I never thought that was possible until I became a medium. So cool.
And is that then you're like speaking with their higher self, speaking with their soul? What would you call that?
I feel like it's obviously connecting with their soul in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, it must be their higher self. It feels the same to me. It feels like I'm channeling a spirit. So I don't get a different feeling. Sometimes when I'm channeling for people, I'm like, oh, this woman's coming through and yada, yada. And someone's like, they're still here. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like I don't feel the difference between the two. So it all feels like a soul to me. But yeah, it's definitely that like higher self soul kind of connection. It's really interesting. Somebody said to me when I was reading for them, and I've never forgotten it. They're like, oh, Jess, I rescheduled my reading with you. And I was like, okay. And she goes, yeah, I rescheduled it because we were having a family occasion. And I just thought that, like, you know, my auntie would want to be present at the family occasion, like looking down on that event. She wouldn't want to be over here with me. So I just thought, I better do it on a night that she won't be busy. She won't want to be at the family do. And I was like, that is the funniest thing ever and so cute. She's like, I didn't want to take the risk that she wouldn't show up for me because she likes to have a good time. And I loved it. And I was like, don't worry, she would have found a way to be in both places at once. But I appreciate the sentiment. I just thought it was one of the funniest things someone's ever said to me. Very thoughtful, but yeah, really cute.
And do you find that you also channel animals? Do animals come through for you?
Yes, I love animals and I love spirit babies too. They are the best to channel. I love spirit baby energy.
What's a spirit baby?
Babies that are on the other side that haven't come into the world yet, or perhaps they are babies that have been lost along the way as well. So if somebody's had a miscarriage or something like that. But spirit babies are beautiful and they've got the same kind of energy as animals to me. It's all like that childlike, like baby kind of vibe. But animals are the best. They come through as like children to us, and they really are, they're so profound, the way that they say things and they know things and the timing of when they come into the world and they're with us and when they choose to go out. It's all so timed. Like I've found when I've read for people, I've said, oh, you know, your dog left on this particular day just weeks before you had your baby because it knew that it could leave you now because you have this baby coming into the world, and it wanted to wait until it knew that you were going to be okay and you would have something to focus on. So things like that happen all of the time. It's like when we hear, you know, somebody's grandfather passes away and like 3 days later, you know, the baby comes into the world. It's sort of like, you know, one goes out and one comes in. And I think sometimes babies come into the world at the perfect divine timing because they help us to have something positive to look forward to in a moment that could be so dark. So you often hear that women's fathers pass away right when they're about to have a baby. I hear it all the time. Oh my gosh, my dad passed like a week before I had my son, or, you know, 3 days after. It's just, I hear it so often and I just think, God, that cannot be a coincidence. I feel like that's got to be something that is so aligned. They're like, nope, if I'm going, you're waiting until this one comes in, so they have something to look forward to and know that there's, you know, more to come that's positive, and we don't have to sit in that grief and that loss and that darkness. Spirit are very clever.
That is very clever.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, all right, get out now.
Yeah.
Now's the time.
Yes.
And does it ever happen for you that you're just channeling that person who's in front of you, like their own soul? Like, by the way, your soul wants you to know da 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 da.
A lot of the time when you're channeling in that kind of psychic way, I guess, you're picking up on things that person is thinking or feeling, and you're validating things that they already know to be true. So sometimes when you're tapping in, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling that this is how you've been. This is what you're wanting to achieve. This is what you're wanting to be. And they're like, oh my God, I haven't said that to anyone. And I'm like, I know, but this is what you need to hear. It's like almost sometimes you need us to be mirrors. to sit there and like regurgitate things to you that you've already been thinking, or things that you've been buried deep down, just to give you the validation that you need in that moment that you're not crazy. Like the things that you are thinking and feeling are just that. So I think a lot of the time in readings, it is validation that we're providing you with that help you know that you're on the right track, or you're aligned with whatever you're thinking or feeling in that moment.
That's a beautiful mirror. So people are also just hiring you to be a mirror.
They are, and I will gladly be.
Yeah, it's beautiful because it's also, I think for people who have less experience, maybe doing like healing sessions or working with mediums, like it can feel, or I don't know if it actually feels that way in the moment, but it's almost like a transaction, which it's not. But before you do it, before you have the courage to actually reach out, it's just like if you don't know someone or you don't know who to reach out to, then you're like, I don't know. But it's actually like, no, there's like, here we are, here's your mirror. And like, I'm channeling the deepest stuff that is most important for you right now in this moment.
Definitely. And I think it's really important too when you're seeking out a healer or a medium or whoever you're going to for advice, or perhaps you don't even know why you're booking things. Sometimes people say to me, I don't know what happened. I just got on your page and I just clicked yes and I just booked it. And all these months later, here we are. And I'm like, oh, okay. They're like, I don't even know why I'm here. I just did it. And I'm like, cool, well, your spirit team clearly know. Let's see what it's all about. And then we dig in and we find out and they're like, oh, that makes so much sense. I get that now. So you know what? I just feel like, go with wherever you feel pulled. If you come across someone, let's just say someone's highly recommended, people are like, oh my God, you have to see this person. They're so great, yada, yada. And you go and look at their page or you look at their website or you listen to them or whatever. And you're like, oh yeah. You're like, okay, I guess so. Don't book that. I'm like, unless you look at that person and you're like, oh yeah, they're my kind of person. That's when you book somebody, because the thing is, you need to have the same vibrational energy. We need to be on the same frequency. If you can't see this person being somebody that could be your friend or someone that you'd want to take advice from, they are not your medium. So I'm not for everyone. Not everyone will like me. Not everyone will blend with me. Like, I'm pretty direct and, I like to have a good time, and my readings are, the mix of the light and the dark. And if you want a really serious reading that's all like deep and like, I am not your girl. Like, we will go where we need to go, but we also live it up a bit too. So you need to pick the right person for you. And if it's not blending, it's not blending. And I don't force anything. I don't pretend to be able to read for everybody. 99% people I can, but there is the 1% where sometimes it just goes a little bit wonky. And I like to say that, because a lot of mediums message me on the side. They're like, oh my God, Jess, has it ever happened to you where you can't read for someone? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, oh my God, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. It is so normal. Not everyone is for everybody. And the courage that you have in that moment to recognize that and close off the meeting within the first 5 or 10 minutes, that is the biggest lesson I've ever had to learn. And it's ego. It's like, oh no, I can do this. And you're like, push, push, push. And you lose your power because they're like, no, no, no. And you're like, oh, okay. I've learned to give it another go. If you get someone and they're like, no, sometimes I'm like, okay, let's try again. Let's go in a different direction. Try again. No, no, no. Okay, can it. I just don't play, because you lose your confidence, which means you're not going to get the same hits. You've already lost it after they've said multiple no's. It's over. Can it. Move on. Next. And then you'll probably find half an hour later you'll do one of the best channelings you've ever done for somebody else. And it was just because your energy didn't blend. Not everyone likes each other. Your spirits might not like me. Like, this person might not like my energy, or we're not blending that day. Is what it is. Not your problem. Move on.
That is a beautiful lesson in boundaries. My God.
Oh,
I would like to pass that along to my younger self.
Oh, me too. I wish that chick like years ago was able to do this stuff, but you have to. You have to protect your peace. And I think too that it's hard enough being a medium or being a healer and trusting what you get. If you sit there in a reading and have someone tell you that everything that you're sensing and feeling is not correct and it's wrong, you are going to doubt yourself for the rest of the day, if not longer. It might domino. So I think you have to think, you know what? Spirit will always show up. Someone will always show up. Even if they can't validate that, it doesn't mean you're crazy and you're picking up on the wrong thing. It's just that maybe they're not realizing who it is, or perhaps they don't want to hear that, or they only were fixated on one particular person or something. Like, it could just be that. So just wipe your hands of it, walk away, go to the next. It's the only thing you can do to keep going in this field. It's really important.
And it's like a great segue, because for people who are listening who are like, I really want to do this, like I want to become a medium, I want to learn it, or I want to practice or grow, what advice would you have for them?
I feel like that confidence is huge. It's like, take the time to get to know who you are, how you channel, what your I guess flow is, what you love to do, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. I think in those 2 years that I spent just exploring, I learned so much about myself. I was like, nope, this is what I love. Even just little things, like I do 40-minute readings. It just works for me. I was like, any longer, I start to lose a bit of my zest for life. I get a little bit drained. I'm like, 30 minutes is too short. I'm like, 40 minutes is kind of good. I feel like that kind of works for me. But you have to figure that stuff out for yourself. You start out and you're like, okay, everyone else does an hour. Everyone else does this. Cool, observe what everyone else does, but at the end of the day, stuff what everyone else does. You do what's good for you. And maybe you take a little piece of someone else and you're like, cool, I like the way they do that, or I like that person's this. Create your own version of what you do. But the magic is in the time. It's the time that you take to figure out what works for you. That's when you truly find your confidence and your power, and you start to ground yourself in what you're doing here. So take the time. Don't rush these things. It takes time.
That is beautiful, as I think about my 90-minute coaching sessions.
Yeah.
My clients have had to develop some muscles for that.
Yeah, well, you know what works for you. You know what's too short. You know what's too long. You know when you're pushing it, when you're not. You just got to find the sweet spot for you with whatever works. And, you know you better than anybody else, and you'll figure it out in time. So just trust that too.
So I know we're coming close to the end of our time together. I'd love to leave people with some, recommendations of like books or podcasts. Are there any people that you follow or recommend if people want to learn more or dive deeper? And of course, also your stuff, because I'm going to share all of that in the show notes, and definitely, but also anyone else that has inspired you along the way.
Yeah. So, first of all, I am inspired by so many different people in so many different areas. And I think that the most important thing you can do if you're starting out in this industry is build your community. Get to know people. Like, the first thing that I did was reach out to other mediums or other healers and get to know who they are and their style, and building that community of people that love you and support you, and you get to be there for them too. Like, there's some of the best friendships that I've made, like, along the way. Honestly, I feel so blessed to know these people, and half of them on the other side of the world. Like, who would have thought that I would be connecting with these like-minded people, sometimes even better than my friends, because they get it. Like, they're the ones that go, oh my God, yes, that full moon affected me too. And they're like, oh my God, have you experienced this? And I'm like, yes. And like, you just thrive off each other's energy. It's so amazing. Honestly, a lot of the people that I've been inspired by have all been on my podcast already. So if you want to go to Talk Spirit to Me is my podcast on Spotify or Apple, go through the list. Nearly all of my guests, well, actually all of my guests are people who inspire me, because I don't have anyone that's shit on my podcast, really. So go through the list and find who you want. I have people in all different areas, but I think that the person that has really inspired me the most, like recently, really, has been her name's the Rich Witch Next Door. So she's in America.
Love that.
I know, I love her tag. It's so good. Her name's Emily. So she is into manifestation. So she's like the manifestation queen. She has helped me to implant so many of my hopes and dreams into my life, and helped me manifest all of these things into fruition. And she's just like a go-to for me in that space. I love manifestation, by the way. Even Stephanie Keith is amazing. Look her up too. She's the law of attraction. I'm into all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, they're some of my favorite go-tos. But definitely go and check out my podcast because you'll love all my guests on there too. But if you want to find me, I am on Instagram and TikTok at Jessica Lynne Mediumship, or you can go to my website, jessicalynnemediumship.com.
Perfect. I'm going to share all of that in the show notes. So in case you don't get to write it down, you're going to have all the links to be able to find Jessica Lynne following this conversation. And I am just so, so grateful that we could find the space and time also in different time zones and all of that to be able to come together. And really, I mean, just thank you for sharing so generously, because I guess you can tell I'm super interested in the topic as well. I'm like, ooh, I want to go deeper. So I just love, that generosity of how that can actually be possible to dive in more.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for having me. It has been such a pleasure and I appreciate you.
Same here. And thank you to everyone who's been listening. And don't forget to tune in next time. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Don't Step on the Bluebells. If you enjoyed this conversation, please give the podcast a 5-star rating wherever you listen. And don't forget to hit subscribe and follow along so you never miss a new episode.